to our very first Shreve Memorial Library virtual book club discussion. I'm so excited to have Jackie Morales and Chris Kirkley from our main branch and the Books Brats Book Club with us today to host this wonderful conversation all about the Expanse. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Jackie and Chris.
All right. Well, thanks for being interested, y'all. Jackie and I both love the Expanse. So when we heard the library was doing a virtual book club, we thought about this series immediately because there's so many books and they're great, and there's a TV show and that's great. And so there's a lot of different stuff to talk about and a lot of different ways into the story for folks, you know, through AV content and audiobooks and comic books. There's even, if we get to that, there's even a role-playing game. And I read the other day that the author, you know, is really two authors that team up under this author name, that he first came up for the idea for the whole universe or the settings for the story as a role-playing game, you know, that he was going to do. And that's where he first kind of fleshed out the universe. And so it lends itself to that a lot. And Jackie, I just jumped in there.
Oh yeah, no, and I wanted to plug. So the name of this includes an existing book club that we have at the library called Books Brats. So we partner downtown with the restaurant Missing Link, and or we did before the pandemic. And once a month we had a book that we discussed. So since we don't have the ability to have hot dogs go around the table, I thought I would share some hot dog trivia. So,
there's not gonna be any hot dogs?
There are no hot dogs, Rich.
No hot dogs for you. I'm sorry. But there's a few things worth knowing about hot dogs. For instance, that there's two cities that are competing for the invention of the hot dog. And that is Frankfurt, Germany, and Vienna, Austria. They both have a claim, and they both have a legitimate claim to the hot dog. But that's why hot dogs are also called Frankfurters and Wieners, because the Wiener being from Vienna. The other thing to know is that Americans eat 9 billion hot dogs a year with a B.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if I say I do my part, I carry my share of that weight. Yeah.
And I got two more pieces of trivia. This year's winner of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest on Coney Island was Joey Chestnut. He's a returning champion. He ate in one sitting 75 hot dogs.
That was too many hot dogs.
Well, it's not just that he ate
really
75,
quickly.
but what's the time limit for the hot dogs eating?
It's like 15 minutes. It's like 15 minutes. But I will say, when there were no sports on, my daughter and I found ESPN, and they had the Nathan's hot dog eating championship. And if you guys have never seen that,
it's hard to watch.
It's something to behold. Like, my daughter won't eat hot dogs anymore because of that. It was something.
It's rough.
The only time I ever saw it, it was a really skinny guy who won. Yeah, I don't understand that.
Joey Chestnut.
Joey Chestnut was the one that won when we watched, and it was hard to watch.
And I forget the guy. It's a little Japanese guy that also won for multiple years in a row.
That's the guy.
Did he retire?
I think he retired because I feel like that's a very big strain on your body. I don't think anyone should eat 75 hot dogs.
So it's like something you train all year long for?
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, they do extensive training to stretch their stomachs to be that elastic, or else they would bust. No, I'm serious.
Okay, last piece of hot dog trivia, which is that, so how did we come up with the term hot dog? Well, a lot of people call them Dachshund sausages because they came over with German and Austrian immigrants. And there's this sports cartoonist, Tad Dorgan, who drew a cartoon of a dachshund in a hot dog, and in a bun, I should say, a dachshund in a bun, but he didn't know how to spell dachshund. This is the early 20th century, so he couldn't Google it. So he just said, "Get your hot dogs," and he put that on the cartoon.
And it stuck.
And
there
stuck.
You go.
There you go.
I don't know if I should be proud or maybe it's just because I'm fat, but I knew all that trivia already.
Even about the 9 billion hot dogs?
I did not know the 9 billion. I apologize. I didn't know that piece of trivia.
That is an astonishing number.
Okay, so now that we've had our little preamble, you guys ready for the Expanse?
Let's do some Expanse.
Here, I have a prop.
I also have a
First,
prop.
Leviathan Wakes, first book in the series. What a tome. All of these books. Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's thousands of pages. Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of people might be longtime fans of the series, but as someone that watched the show first and then decided to read the books, I was a little disappointed on how closely the first first season of the show followed the first book, because there was no new information.
Oh, for you.
Yeah, for me as the watcher and then the reader, it was just basically recapping what I had just watched.
Yeah, it tracked it very well.
It tracked, and I appreciated that. Like if I had read the book first and then watched the show, like I would have been like, oh yeah, they followed it really well. But watching the show first, then it's like, okay, I already know all of this. Like they're going like almost word for word. But then, like a quarter of the way through the book, it really starts to have its own identity. So the show and the book, I feel like you can enjoy it either way, either reading the book or watching the show first, because the first book and the first season are different enough to enjoy.
Yeah, one of the things that makes me think of, if I can for a second, is if I'd watched the show first and then read the books, I would be missing characters, because some of the pivotal characters in the series, the book series, aren't introduced in the first book, but because they're pivotal characters to the whole story, they start off from the beginning of the TV show. And so that would bug me, I think, if I were coming from the show to the books. I would like, where's this Machiavellian, sweet lady, not so sweet politician, Christian Avasarala? She's this really powerful figure in the story, but she's completely missing from the first book.
From the first book.
Yeah, so she's not in the first book.
So I think it's good. Maybe we should establish where we all are in the universe. So
let's do that. Who's a show watcher?
I'm a show watcher, and I've watched all 4 seasons. And I'm a reader, and I have read 7 of the 8 books that are available. So the last one I read was book 7, and book 8 is available as of last year.
Yeah. Well, I'm also into both. I'm a season down from you. I've seen 3 seasons of the show. I've read all 8 of the books so far.
Richard?
I am a show watcher. I watched all 4 seasons, and thankfully I got into it right as the 4th season came out, so I didn't have that giant gap of no show. But and then I've only read the first book, so I'm not that far into the book series.
Olivia?
Okay, so I'm a newbie. Hello.
Welcome.
I wanted to listen in to see, how you guys, what your experience has been like when reading the book or watching the show. And based on that, hopefully, I'll decide if I want to read the book or watch the show.
Okay, well, good deal.
So we'll try very hard to avoid spoilers then.
That's the next thing. Yeah, we don't want to blow the next season or the next book for anybody. So we might talk about thematic themes and characters and settings and stuff, and not shocking plot developments. And
yeah, I was going to suggest that too, because I haven't read the books or watched the show. So you can give like a brief overview of what the Expanse is all about for those of us who are not familiar, without giving away any spoilers or twists. That might help for those who are brand new to the Expanse. Because there are those people out there.
That's true. Yeah.
Who else
Jackie,
do we have here?
You would tee off
Sherry?
on that?
Well, we still have some more people to go through. Sherry, did you want to tell us where you were in the series?
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi. I'm not quite in it yet, but I was just joining to get to see what it was about, so I could join into it.
All
I
right.
just been sitting back listening.
So far, we've got 3 people who are deep into it and 3 people who are new to it. So that's great. And
Yeah.
Kayla, what about you? Where are you?
Okay, am I okay?
We can
This
hear
is
you.
my first Zoom, so I'm the one that doesn't know how anything works. I've read the first book, and I tried to watch the TV show, but I'm not really good at watching TV, so I only watched like maybe 3 episodes, and then I got distracted and forgot that I was watching it until the book club. I was like, oh yeah, I was watching that like 7 months ago. Maybe I should go back to that because it's really not terrible.
Well, then, welcome back to the Expanse.
Yeah. All right, let's discuss the general setting and stuff. Who wants to start with that? Jackie, you want to take a lead on that, or you want me to...
I will try my best to set us up. So, the Expanse is an expansive world of interstellar travel, or not interstellar, what do you call it? Solar? Yeah, within the solar system. Yeah, interplanetary travel. Yeah. And we are a few hundred years in the future from now, and there are 3 main political factions. There is Earth, there is Mars, and there is the belt. So that's the outer. What would you call it?
Outer Planets Alliance, or the asteroid belt, and little colonies further out than Mars, around Jupiter and Saturn and things.
And it's an interesting world where Earth and Mars are basically in a Cold War. Earth is the vast consumer of all the wealth of the solar system. Most of the wealth is coming from the belt, and they are all poor and poor immigrant laborers, basically.
So one of the strengths of the book is that the characters, for the most part, although they may take on crucial roles and really pivotal big events, they're not like the generals and presidents or kings of anything. They're regular people. It's a pilot or a miner, or just a regular soldier, and that are getting caught up in bigger events. And one of the strengths of the series is the thought that the authors give to how this sort of interstellar political system plays out in the lives and impacts the lives of these real people. And so it gives the story all kind of resonance, because you can't help but see parallels to your own life and things that you may have read from history or see in the news, even if it's not like some closely patterned, because it's not like some closely patterned thing where you go, oh, well, this is obviously the United States and this is Japan. It's nothing like that. They're very different. But yeah, the politics, the way because a fair part of the story concerns politics and conflict and how that impacts the lives of regular people. And the authors have done a really good job, I think, and it shows up in the series and the books as well, of bringing the politics and the intrigue and conflict of a completely made up world into the lives, grounded in the lives of real seeming people, so that it just resonates.
Well, also a lot of books, when they start talking about the politics of that particular world, it gets really boring. You're like, oh, they have to explain the whole political system, and it's just like an information dump. And that doesn't really happen in the Expanse, because for the most part, it's the point of view. Like the big things, the big political things are happening, and some of the characters of the show are involved, but I feel like it's more character driven than politic driven narrative.
Yes. Yeah. It's grounded in people and characters who seem real.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, when I was prepping to market this book talk, like one of the things I noticed when I was reading about the book was that in the different books, like there will be chapters that are given from different characters' points of view. So like you might have a whole chapter from one person's point of view and then it'll change to somebody else's. So how does that play out in the story? I mean, do you get to know the characters or?
Well,
there's different.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say there's different stories happening simultaneously, and I feel like that's part of the reason why that has to happen. You know, there's multiple things happening on different places at the same time that sometimes, you know, will end up all converging sometimes, you know. So that's kind of why you get those different characters, different points of views.
What I like about that writing style, George Martin writes like that for Game of Thrones too. And what I like about it is that even characters who you want to feel like that's the villain, because you're getting their perspective, it makes it sometimes difficult to completely just villainize the character, you know, because
they're all really
have their
gray.
own motivation.
Yeah, and you get a lot of different psychological viewpoints. If that was poorly done, then you would be getting all these characters' insights, but they would all be written as basically different versions of the same character, and it wouldn't work. But it does work because the different characters feel like different people, and you're getting their own personal slant on different events, and people seeing the same events completely differently, and people seeing other characters completely differently, and more importantly, seeing them very differently than the character sees themselves when you're inside the head of that same character.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's a great question, Samantha. And I think really well. Yeah.
A good point since we have so many non-readers of the series to point out is we've been saying authors. So the pen name of this writing duo is James S.A. Corey, but it's actually two authors, Daniel Abram and Ty Frank. They co-author the series together, and Chris touched on it earlier that Ty Frank is the one who started work. Actually, he gave an interview, and I was just watching it before I came on from at Google, and they were talking about how the series started. And he was going to work on a like a World of Warcraft type of online role playing game, and he was working with these people to develop this, and he's writing all this stuff and doing the world building, and then the whole thing just fell apart. And so he had binders and binders of all the stuff that he had built for. It wasn't the Expanse then. He made it very clear that it was something completely different, but he built off of it and started, because he put so much effort into it. And so then he thought about making it like a tabletop type of role-playing game, like Dungeons and Dragons type of game. And he moves to New Mexico and meets Daniel Abram, and who's also a writer. And they start playing this game together, and Daniel Abram became so enamored with how much detail there was in this game that they were playing, cool, that he said he started emailing him at 3:00 in the morning, like asking him. So that the two of them just kind of like just
the first band,
yeah, his first band. And so they decided, like, well, why don't we novelize this? And they did. Ty Frank had no previous publications before this, and so he said in an interview that his experiences is you write a book and it becomes an international bestseller and gets a TV show.
Sure, that's just what happens, right? Yeah. That's got to help with the different viewpoints, and you got more than one writer. So, I mean, right off the bat, that's got to help a little bit. My understanding is that they each take the lead on different groups of characters. Like one of them may have, half dozen characters in it, because there are a lot of characters in the show by this point, or the books. So one of them may take the lead on several, and the other writer takes the lead on several, and they help edit each other. So it's a genuine collaboration across the board, but that they divide the characters up like that. So that might help with that too.
Yeah, I can see the advantage of, them dividing up the characters to get like genuine different personalities for these people.
Which they do a great job of. And well, we're talking about characters, but you've got the three main factions that we start with, the three main areas of cultures, human cultures that we're dealing with. You've got these people on Earth and people on Mars, and then you've got these outer planets folks who have been sort of oppressed and abandoned and are out there where most of the story takes place, which is in the deep parts of our solar system. So most of the story's taking place out there where these people live. And so we spend a lot of time in that culture, and it's really well realized, I think,
One of the things they do great on the show, and in the books, is my favorite, probably one of my favorite anecdotes, is that a lot of early Martian colonizers came from Texas.
Really?
And so, for whatever reason, a lot of people came from Texas to go live on Mars. And so, but lots of people came from all over the world to live on Mars. But most Martians have a Texan drawl.
Interesting.
Well, yeah,
So,
that's something else. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I was saying that, like, I wanted to also talk about, like, especially it'd be kind of interesting for the non-readers to hear the difference between the different cultures and how much the science has changed and the environment has changed the different cultures. Like how the Belters are usually long and lanky because they spend most of their time in zero gravity, and the Martians are extremely smart because most of the colonists at first were all scientists. So you have a gene pool of super smart people, multiplying, and so that's why Mars actually in the world has a technological advantage over Earth for the most part.
Yeah. And
how Earth is just really bureaucratic. It's like the big bully of the neighborhood because it has most of the people.
Yeah, and the established power relationships favor Earth.
Yeah, it very much mimics our own real history of colonization.
It kind of does, yeah.
Yeah.
But they paid attention to their history books. It's not a repetition of anything you read in your history book, but it resonates. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go, that would totally happen,
Yeah. It feels plausible. The technology feels plausible, and that the technology, it doesn't seem magical, It's not like, wow, they can just push a button and zip down to the planet, or it feels real.
Did we lose you?
The level of detail that he put into the spaceships are kind of like built like skyscrapers, because whenever they're going through space, all the gravity is going to be pushing down because of the force of the thrust, and just things like that. Like, you can tell that he spent like a lot of time thinking about all of this.
Oh yeah, the science on the show is very believable.
So, like, a lot of sci-fi things that are in outer space, there's like aliens. Is this one of those things where there's aliens, or is it everyone basically humans that have left Earth and gone to live on Mars or the outer belt, or is there like a mix of?
There's a maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
That's a big question. I don't think we'd be giving away anything from somebody who maybe, if you read a 1 or 2 paragraph description of the first season of the first show, or the first book, you would probably get a description of these different human relationships in the solar system that we had just described. And then something new comes along that might be a catalyst to start rocking that system.
Yes. So
it's certainly the beginning of the story.
So there's a certain power dynamic balance between these 3 political factions. And now we're going to insert a monkey wrench into that, and then enter from stage left our main characters.
Let's talk about them. We haven't talked about the main characters.
We haven't talked about the main characters. The crew of the Rocinante.
Yeah. So there's a ship. there's a ship and a crew, and those are our the main characters. And the cast grows, but the main characters are the crew of one ship that is caught up in the middle of all the big things that are going on, and they're just regular folks, and they're caught up in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, and the first book kind of, like the first half of the first book kind of establishes how they all get to be on that ship, you know. Well, maybe not the first half, like.
But what's great is, so without giving too much away, so you have the captain, James Holden. He's an earther. And you have their not an engineer. Wait, what's
Naomi?
Naomi.
She's an engineer, yeah.
She's their engineer, right? Yeah. Naomi is a belter. Then you have Amos, who is their mechanic. He is also an earther, but he's a mysterious earther. You don't know much about him. And then, what's the pilot's name? Alex. Yeah. And then you have Alex, who is a Martian with a really charming Texan accent.
He's the pilot.
He's the pilot.
And they're an interesting bunch in that you've got a fair number of secrets among the crew. You've got people who are all running from something, which is why they all wound up in the place that they are to start with. They didn't. They're all sort of running from something, and it is a wildly divergent bunch of characters just to start with, from easygoing people to barely repressed homicidal sociopathy, tightly controlled sociopathy, and fueled by homicidal urges, messiah complexes, you know.
If you don't like explosions and gunfights and fist fights, this is not the story for you.
The action's really good. We've talked about all these political things and this, and how it feels psychologically grounded in a real way too, and how the technology seems realistic and really thought out. But the action scenes there's lots of them, and they're really well done. If it's a space fight or a brawl in a bar or some sort of desperate fight against something nobody's ever seen before, they're really well done. The action scenes really carry along quickly. They're good.
Yeah,
that's in the books and the show.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I was about to say the show. I think what a wonderful adaptation of the. They couldn't have done it better. I don't think.
And like I said, like the first season of the show almost follows the book, like at least the first quarter of it, like verbatim.
Yeah.
One thing that is
Almost.
challenging that I think they've handled quite well for the show is that the authors are not afraid to introduce a character, make them pivotal in a book, and then not reintroduce them, not have them come back for 2 or 3 books.
Oh, wow.
Well, you don't really want to do that if you have a great character, a great actor. You say, well, we'll see you back in season 4.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've been creative on how they made those characters still relevant.
Yeah, the show does a good job of introducing all the main characters from the whole story, from near the beginning or near the beginning, and including them in ways that make sense through the whole story. So you're not suddenly, well, who's this person? Why are we following them around? Where's our cast? You know. So they do a good job of that. It's another way. It's a very faithful and smart adaptation of the books, of the source material. So I don't know.
I have a question. So the first season followed the first book. Like, I assume that the series goes in order, right? They build up from book to book. It's not this happens and then we have a prequel and then a backstory, and
there are actually
build on each other.
There are novellas which do some backstories, but the main series is a series of 9 books, the 9th one not being published yet.
But they're sequential, like you said. It's an ongoing story that builds as it goes.
Gotcha.
And changes a lot as it goes.
One of the things they've done with the show to help, like I said, with these issues with characters not being introduced or disappearing for long periods of time that happened in the books, they some of this once you get past the first season of the show, there's going to be a small amount of overlap between the story and how they adapt it so that they can make it more seamless. Like they're adapting the whole series, not just a book a season.
Gotcha.
But it's pretty close. It's pretty close to book a season, though. They've done a pretty good job with keeping that same kind of pace.
Yeah, the overall pace is the same. A lot of details may vary because there's just a lot of difference between telling us, a story in a season of a show and telling it in this big doorstopper of a book. Although, like I said, they gallop along, but they can be intimidating thick books. It doesn't look like something you're going to read over a weekend. But the general arc of the story, where the main story ends in the end of one book, is pretty well closely tracked to where the same story is going to end at the end of the season. So in terms of the general, movement of the story, the seasons follow the books pretty closely, I think.
I would like to hear from everyone because I feel like just a few of us are monopolizing.
That is true. I was thinking the same.
So here's what I was wondering. I would like to know everyone's favorite sci-fi television, movie, or book series.
I need to think about this for a second.
Favorite.
We put all of you on the spot.
So I have to pick a favorite.
Yeah, or something that just comes to mind right away.
Well, I'm a big fantasy and sci-fi kind of nerd, so I mean, you're gonna have your Lord of the Rings and your Harry Potter and your, all that good stuff. So I'd probably say Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter for sure.
You want to do like a Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings crossover event? Like, bring them together.
The Infinity Philosopher's Stone.
Yes.
I would watch that. Yeah.
Like, write that down quickly.
Yeah.
My all-time favorite is going to be the Dune series.
Ooh. Yeah.
Though I never finished Dune because they got too wild and crazy for me.
Yeah. Well, he passed away and his family took over at some point, and that's when it kind of got a little.
Well, no, he wrote some crazy stuff too. Like it went thousands and thousands of years into the future.
Yeah,
that was still interesting, though. Yeah, it felt like he was telling the same story, sort of. Yeah.
All right, and Pallavi, I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, okay. Oh, well.
Favorite sci-fi or fantasy?
Right, it's hard.
Yay. Okay. Well, we do love our Star Wars. I find it's not just the science fiction. What I like the most about Star Wars movies is the characters are always very well developed, and they are, mentally very strong, whether they are on the good side or bad side as per se. They know what they want. They're very confident. It's not, so I really like that about Star Wars. I would admit I have to watch the movies twice sometimes just to kind of make sure I understood and grasped because there's so many it's easy to miss things in Star Wars movies.
It's a big universe, yeah.
They've committed a lot of time and energy to it, and they've really thought things through. So when you're watching it, sometimes you tend to not appreciate it that much. So I do like that. So Star Wars, I would say. The other one I would say that I've watched because of the whole COVID thing. I've been watching a lot of movies, so I've watched like all Avengers at least time.
Yeah.
They're so good.
They're just so good, and sometimes when I don't know what else to watch, I just put the Infinity Wars and I just watch it over and over.
Okay, so there's like 20 of those movies. What's your favorite of the Avengers? I mean, of all the Avenger movies?
I'm going to say Age of Ultron. I like the Infinity War. I can only imagine how much planning it went through, because now that we watch the beginning of a lot of the movies from Iron Man. We were watching a recent one called Guardians of the Galaxy, and when the first time I watched it,
yeah, I love that.
I didn't realize that they actually talked about Thanos in there, and they actually showed Thanos, and it just didn't. I didn't appreciate that enough until when we watched the Infinity Wars, movie. But it really
well, yeah, those movies are over a 10-year period.
Yeah, and I can't even
so
imagine.
ambitious.
Yeah, so ambitious, and like they've really thought things through like years in advance. So I really appreciate that they didn't just just create a story. They actually developed it from beginning, and they really had a vision. But I do love the Age of Ultron. I don't know, something about that Ultron guy. I really like it. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Well, Chris knows which one's my favorite.
Which one is yours?
I don't know. I'm not coming up with it, Jackie. What do you got?
Oh, you don't remember? Okay. Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Oh yeah, that one.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious too. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really good.
I kept saying, Chris, have you seen it? Chris, have you seen it?
And finally I did, and it was so great. If I had to pick a favorite of the whole Marvel movies, I can. Guardians 1, that first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, is a movie
it was
that I can
pretty
just
perfect.
watch. It's just a perfect film. I mean, it's great how it fits in the whole story, and it's got a big story, but it's not. I mean, not the whole universe literally doesn't hang in the balance, but it's just a perfect film. I've probably watched that film 6 or 7 times, and the number of films that I've seen as an adult over and over again, or as a middle-aged adult over and over again, are decreasingly few. You just don't have time to watch movies. But that movie, I bet I've seen that movie half dozen times. Yeah, it's great.
So Samantha, which one's your favorite?
Okay, so see, I have to have like categories because I think of like magic, and I have one that I think of like dragons and swords because, you start thinking about Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, but then we start talking about superheroes, and I'm all over the place. I can't pick one. I'm like, I don't know.
You don't have to pick one.
I don't know.
What's your favorite Avengers? What about of the Avengers Marvel movies?
Okay, so of Marvel, anything, my favorite is the X-Men. I love X-Men.
They're so great.
I've always loved X-Men.
Those are great.
I love the comics. I love the cartoon. X-Men has always been my favorite.
Yeah, those are great movies. I love those.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to plug Hoopla then, because I just last year, reread a bunch of X-Men classics, like starting from comics. Yeah. Hoopla has them there's lots of e-comics on Hoopla, and they have, I'm trying to remember who the author is, who did those X-Men comics in the 70s and 80s.
Chris Claremont, John Byrne.
Chris Claremont, yeah.
Chris Claremont, John Byrne drew them, yeah.
Yeah. And
give me my nerd hat. I was putting on there.
There you go. And Hoopla has it, and you basically can get like the first 50, 60 issues of their run. It's years of stuff. Yeah. And it's so I had read them as a kid, and I didn't appreciate them because you see this little evolution happen like very quickly over like the first 10 issues, from it just being mediocre, okay, just whatever, two-dimensional, to being like really amazing art, great stories, just gripping.
Yeah.
Gripping
just
stuff.
Grabs you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason they took those. The X-Men's been around since the 60s, and so that's 55 years of stories now. There's a reason that when you're watching the movies, there's a reason that the stories that the movies tell are the stories from about 10 years worth of those comics from Claremont and John Byrne, because they're just so perfectly realized and iconic.
Yeah. Those
are the
guys
stories you make the movies about,
right?
Yeah, they gave us, those guys are the ones who gave us Wolverine. They gave us Storm. They gave us Nightcrawler. They didn't exist before them. And,
Dark Phoenix and killing Jean and all the things they had to do.
Yeah.
Rogue.
Did all of them.
And Days of Future Past. That all was Chris Claremont.
Yeah. He's a great writer.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite X-Men.
There you go. You win.
Well, that's pretty good.
I think you won.
Yeah. All right. Well, just as a note, Expanse comics are available on Hoopla Digital as well.
Oh, are they? Oh, yeah, that's right. You did tell me that earlier.
And they do a good job of tracking they're adaptations of the TV series, and the TV series is such a faithful adaptation of the book. That's a pretty good, easy window into the story right there, or access point.
Awesome.
My other favorite thing about the Expanse is the how terrible the food is in space.
Is it that freeze-dried astronaut food?
No, they always say they're always eating like some sort of Asian noodle dish, but it's always like just basically mushrooms.
They have to grow everything. They can't afford to ship beef and rice and all the things out to space. And so they're they've got the descendants of the ethnic cuisines that they took with them. But they're creating it with stuff that you can grow, like things made out of mushrooms and molds and stuff that you can grow in the inside of a bubble a billion miles from here. And it doesn't
sound too good.
And
appetizing.
But I love the what is it that the Belters eat? They eat this thing called kibble.
Sounds like what you feed a dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I forget exactly what it's like, but they're kind of, what's nice about it is they're proud of their terrible food.
Oh,
yeah, it's what they eat.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you can't hang with us because you can't stomach this stuff.
Along those same lines, one of the things as a coffee addict that I appreciate is the amount of thought and care and time in the story that we get with one of the main characters, the captain of the ship that we're following, treasuring his cup of coffee when he gets it. He spends, if you added up all the pages that we've got with this character, James Holden, thinking about his cup of coffee or treasuring his cup of coffee or pouring his cup of coffee or sitting at the table watching all the other characters drinking his cup of coffee. It's something I'm down with, and it speaks to me.
Yeah, that's because he's an earther.
Yeah.
And he wants that cup of coffee.
He needs his coffee, and I can appreciate it.
Well, it's just such a fun series.
Do you guys have any questions? So once again, there's 4 of us here now. There's 2 of us that have been reading these books and watching the show, and you guys are maybe interested or you're finding out more about it. Do you have any more questions that you something you want to know? Yes, Pallavi.
I do have a question. So out of the series or actually reading the book, which one did you enjoy the most?
Oh, for me, it's, I think is it the 3rd novel? I have to look up the names of the novels. They kind of blur together in my head.
And there are 9 novels, you said, right? 9 of them?
8 so far, and a 9th one coming.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, it's the books. I love this show, and I think they've done a great job of adapting the story, the books, to the show, and the show's great. It stands on its own. If you just want to watch the show, you're watching a great thing, and you're getting a good feel for the whole story. So it's not like you're, but you can still just put more into, a 600-page book, more character and more internal thought processes, things that you hear what they think and say instead of having to show it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think the books are richer than the series. But I also read the books first. I may be biased, but my answer to your question is the books. Yeah. And then you get to watch the show and see what a great job they did and see what the and you have your own images that you build of these characters in these situations when you're reading it, but it's not like a disappointment or a loss when you see the great job they did of translating the characters and the settings and everything into the show. It just makes it richer to me. They've done such a great job.
So Chris, you've read all 8 of the books, is that right?
I have. It's pandemic. I read the last 2 while we were locked down.
And I've read 7 of the 8.
Okay, so since you guys have read almost all of the books together, do you find that when you're watching the show, you're anticipating what's going to come next, or do you get kind of lost in the show and you kind of forget a little bit of what you read?
My thing is usually I'm curious how they're going to approach a certain thing.
Okay.
There's a character in one of the books that I really, really loved, who basically is not in the show, actually isn't in the show, I think. But they gave all of his but he was pivotal to the book. But they gave all of his pivotal stuff to one of our characters who was sidelined in the book. And we said how characters disappear. So that was probably the only time I really felt like I really was missing a character. Okay. Otherwise, I just like to see, I just appreciate like, well, how are they going to approach this thing and how it played out in the book versus how it's going to play it on the show.
Yeah. So when I'm watching the show, I know where that story arc's going to end at the season. Probably. I certainly know where the overall story's going, and I know the general place of our characters in that, and they do a good job of keeping those things together. But still, it's a different way of telling a story, and you've got to tell it differently. And so, other than big things, I mean, you're watching a movie about World War II, you know who's going to win it in the end,
Right.
But you don't know everything that's going to happen to these guys. So it's not as broad as that. But I don't find myself just anticipating what's going to come next and what's going to come next. I kind of get lost in the show. It's really well done. The actors are great. The scripts are great. The shows are basically written by the authors of the books, or at least one of the authors of the book. I think it's both of them. Yeah. So the guys who wrote the books are adapting the story themselves, and they're retelling their story, but they're telling it in a different way. I don't find myself that I'm just sitting there anticipating the next thing. That's a great question.
Yeah. I recommend. So if you don't know this, I recommend it. You should. I mean, I know it's many hundreds of pages per book, but it doesn't really feel like that. At least to me, it doesn't.
Because it moves along pretty quickly. I mean, it's not dense. Rich we were talking earlier about so it's in space, and and they're introducing a lot of political stuff and intrigue in between different factions and stuff. And that could really easily be, like Rich said, a massive info dump. And so you got one character says, well, as you know, and then talks about some interplanetary parliament for 15 pages. That sounds awful. Who wants to read that? There's not that kind of stuff, there's not these information dumps. They build the thing incrementally in the lives of the characters. And there's so many action scenes, and just so much movement and constantly changing gears between different characters that the books move along quickly. I mean, they're substantial, but they're not slow.
If either of you guys have Amazon Prime, I recommend watching at least the first 1 or 2 episodes. And if you like it, I would shelve the show and read the book.
Yeah, read the book first. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, I would say read the book first, but they could get a taste of it by trying the show.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, we're about right at an hour, so are there any final thoughts you guys want to add to the conversation? Or any other thing you want to say about The Expanse?
I'm going to be sad when the series ends.
Yeah. I wonder what they'll do. I wonder if they'll try and take a break for a couple of years and then pick up the same universe later, where they're not writing the same characters for 15 years. I get that, and I respect that they want to, because they're planning on ending it like at a definite point. They're not just going to keep writing these books forever. I have read series that continued because.
Oh, Chris. Looks like you're a little frozen over there.
That's a lot of money.
Whereas these guys seem determined to.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. There we go. They seem determined to end the story where the story ends. Good deal. Yeah. And they seem
that's great.
Yeah, they're going to end the story when they're telling the story, and they're not just writing books. So. Awesome. Last thought. I don't know.
I am also very thankful to Jeff Bezos of Amazon.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah. They saved the show.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know this, the show actually was originally on Sci-Fi Channel, and it got canceled after the 3rd season.
Because it was expensive, not because it wasn't doing well. It's just expensive to make.
And there was a huge bit of uproar among the fans, and Jeff Bezos, out of nowhere, because he's a super fan of the show, says, I'll just buy it and produce it because I want to see what happens next.
Wow. Must be pretty good.
it's a really old-fashioned story in one way in terms of science fiction, and that it echoes back to a lot of the really early science fiction stories of the 40s and 50s, and that it's a classic space opera, and that it's a science fiction story, not where some computer scientist in the lab is having weird things happen, trying to communicate with some alien or just something crazy and unusual. It's it's guys flying around the solar system in a spaceship and strange things are happening. But so it's in that sense, as a space opera, it's a really old kind of science fiction story, but it feels fresh and new and current, and it's cool, and y'all should try it.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, I want to thank you guys for leading this wonderful conversation on The Expanse. I think I'm going to have to check it out. It might go into my brain as one of the ones I can't pick as my favorite. So you guys made it sound very interesting without giving away any spoilers.
Good job.
It was hard. It was very hard. I'm a spoiler giver, so that was hard for me.
Well, thank you so much for organizing this. And this Zoom session is awesome because we can social distance and I can log in from anywhere. So this is really awesome. I love this. We should, hopefully you guys do this more often.
Yeah, and maybe we'll all have hot dogs next time.
Next time we'll have hot dogs. It's so nice to see you and hear your voice, Pauline.
Sounds good. Same here.
All right. Well, y'all have a great day, and we'll see you at the next book.
Awesome.
Oh, man. I just got back. You guys are leaving?
We're leaving. Rich, do you have a final thought about the show or the book?
I just really like the science, how they incorporate it in. The story is really good. It's an action detective story, and then each book is something a little bit different. And I like the whole series as much as I've gotten into it.
Awesome.
Yeah, but you can't say it better than that.
Yeah, well done.
Well, thanks, guys. Y'all have a great night, and I appreciate y'all for being part of our first virtual book club discussion. I had a lot of fun.
This is fun.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Sam, for running it.
Yeah.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for having us.
All right.
Thank you. Good night. Take care.
Good night, guys.
Night, y'all.
Bye.